start on page 55. We're going to be solving quadratic equations. Now, y'all have done this, and you know the formula. But it is on your formula sheet. If you'll take out that formula sheet that I gave you, the laminated copy, you can use it as long as it's not written on, which is the reason why I laminated it, to make it a little bit more difficult. If you look at the very top of that page, you have the quadratic formula. Yes? Okay. So you can use that quadratic formula. If they ask you to write everything out, you would write it out according to that. Otherwise, I would check it in what? In your calculator. Polysolve. Okay. So that's basically quadratic equations. Okay. So turn to page 57. And I'm going to help you understand the concept before I introduce it. Because sometimes I feel like when you discover it on your own, it becomes yours. So everybody write these down. Okay, write those down for me. Now, what I'm going to have you do, y'all all recognize that as a quadratic formula, right? So like if you did the quadratic formula that's on the top of your formula sheet, opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac under the radical all over 2a. So this is the quadratic formula's end result. So what I want you to do is you have a calculator out in front of you. This is going to end up with two answers. You don't have a plus or minus button on your calculator. So you have to do 2 plus square root of 4 over 3 and then do 2 minus square root of 4 over 3. So I want you to do that for all three of those, and then we're going to talk about what you get. Okay, so what were my answer or answers for the first one? 4 over 3 and 0. Okay, now 0 is an answer. We understand that? Okay, what about here? 2/3. 2/3 and 2/3, but that's just really just 2/3. Okay, what about this one? Domain error. So I'm going to say no roots. Okay? So looking at this problem, what can you tell me is the only difference between these three problems? The number under the square root or the radical, right? The number under the square root or the radical. That's the only difference, right? Okay. What can we say about this number under the radical? It's positive. How can I write that in a very sophisticated math general term? It is what? greater than 0. So these are all with, now, this is using, yep, I'll get that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, what about this one? Equals to 0. What about this one? Less than 0. Now, the name for this thing that I have highlighted in green is called the discriminant. Look on page 57. Okay? So I could have taken you through all that. It probably would have meant a whole lot less to you than going through this exercise. So when my discriminant is greater than 0, how many answers do I have? 2. 2 answers, or 2 roots, or 2 zeros. Okay? How many answers do I have if my discriminant is equal to 0? 1 root, 1 answer, 1 0. How many do I have if I have a discriminant that's less than 0 or negative? None. No roots. Now, when we're talking about the discriminant, we're talking about only the number under the radical. We're not taking the square root of that. We're just doing the b squared minus 4ac. Okay? That's all we're doing. All right. So, let's read through these 4 bullet points right now. And this is very important. This will show up 2 to 3 times, usually on your examinations in May. And it was not something when I first taught this that I thought was extremely important, but it is. If b squared minus 4ac is a perfect square, now, this was a perfect square, right? 4. 4 was a perfect square. I had an integer and a fraction. If it's a perfect square, it would come out to be an integer and a fraction. If it's not a perfect square, it's still 2 of them, but it may be 3.111 or negative 2.444, whatever. Okay. If b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, the answer will have 2 roots. If b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, there will be no roots. And if b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, then there is 1 root. Now this is extremely important that we read this next line. Sometimes it is said that these are called 2 coincidence roots or a repeated root. Now, did that make sense to you that it might be referred to as a repeated root? So when you put it in PolySolve, you got 2/3 and 2/3. That number repeated, but it's still just 1 answer. Okay? So what I want to do right now is I want you to practice on page 58. You're going to determine whether they have 2, 1, or no roots. All right, so your answer is not the discriminant. Your answer is 2 roots, 1 root, or no roots. You're going to do number 2, A, D, and G. Now, a lot of times I'm going to call this the DISC, the discriminant, so I don't have to write out that long word. So you're going to do the discriminant for each one of these 3. If it's positive, you're going to tell me 2 roots. If it's 0, you're going to tell me 1. And if it's negative, you're going to tell me no roots. Okay, so go ahead and do that. You can use your calculator, absolutely. Now, I will tell you when that b is negative, what must you do in the calculator? You better put it in parentheses. Okay? Do not type in negative 5 squared. You better type in parentheses, negative 5 closed, and then squared. on A, how many roots did we have? Alright, let's do -3 squared in parentheses minus 4 times 1 times -5. So I get a positive what? 29. So if it's positive, it's greater than 0, and we should have 2 roots. Okay, any questions with that one? All right, D was the next one. So I've got -6 squared minus 4 times 3 times 5. So that's 36 minus 60. So that's negative. So how many roots does that one have? None. Okay. That was D. And G, I can't do, well, no, wait a minute. Yeah, I can't do that 42 squared. 42 squared minus 4 times 3 times 147 equaled 0, so there was 1 root. Okay, this is your quiz on Monday. Well, this is part of it, but the discriminant part. Well, we're going to keep on discriminant. Okay, so let's look down at number 4. Let's look at question 4. It says the following equations have the number of roots shown in brackets. Deduce as much as you can about the value of K. K's value. All right, let's look at A. X squared plus 3x plus K equals 0. And out in the bracket, it's telling me 2 roots. Yes? So if it has 2 roots, then the discriminant, b squared minus 4 times a, what is my c? K. My discriminant is what? Greater than 0. This right here, everybody, leads me to that. You understand? So, 3 squared is what? Minus 4k is greater than 0. So, minus 9. So, negative 4k is greater than negative 9. So, k is less than 9/4. That's what I can deduce about the value of k. Can we check this? We should be able to. Give me a number less than 9/4. 2. So 9/4 will be 2 1/4, right? So we could do 2. That work? Okay. Store 2 is x. And let's do our polysolve. So your A is 1. Oh, we don't have to store it as x, I'm sorry. The A is 1, the B is 3, and the K is 2. How many roots did you get? 2. Okay. Now, let's look. Oops, all right, phone time. Phone time. what I want y'all to do right now is y'all are going to do number 4. You're going to do D, E, and F. So what you've got to do is you've got to have B squared minus 4AC. Now, if the K is the B, you put K squared. If the K shows up in the A spot, then that's fine, you put that here. Or if it shows up in the C spot, you are solving for K. Then you're going to either set it greater than 0 if there are 2. You're going to set it equal to 0 if there are 1. And you're going to set it less than 0 if there are none. Okay, so do that for these 3.